the Hydra. The Lernaean Hydra, or Hydra of Lerna, in Greek Lernaea Hydra, more often known simply as the Hydra, is a serpentine water monster in Greek and Roman mythology. Its lair was the Lake of Lerna in the Argolid, which was also the site of the myth of the Danaides. Lerna was reputed to be an entrance to the underworld, and archaeology has established it as a sacred site older than Mycenaean Argos. In the canonical Hydra myth, the monster is killed by Heracles, or Hercules, as the second of his 12 labours. According to Hesiod, the Hydra was the offspring of Typhon and Echidna. It had poisonous breath and blood so virulent that even its scent was deadly. The Hydra possessed many heads, the exact number of which varies according to the source. Later versions of the Hydra story reveal a regeneration feature to the monster. For every head chopped off, the Hydra would regrow 2 heads. Heracles required the assistance of his nephew Aeolus to cut off all the monster's heads and burn the neck using sword and fire. The oldest images of the monster are found on a pair of bronze fibulae dating to circa 700 BCE. In both these sources, the main motifs of the Hydra myth are already present, a multi-headed serpent that is slain by Heracles and Aeolus. While these fibulae portray a 6-headed Hydra, its number of heads was first fixed in writing by Alcaeus, circa 600 BCE, who gave it 9 heads. Simonides, writing a century later, increased the number to 50, while Euripides, Virgil and others did not give an exact figure. The Hydra had many parallels in ancient Near Eastern religions, in particular Sumerian, Babylonian and Assyrian mythology. These celebrated the deeds of the war and hunting god Ninurta, whom the Angim credited with slaying 11 monsters on an expedition to the mountains. This included a 7-headed serpent possibly identical with the Mushmahu and Bashmu, whose constellation, despite having a single head, was later associated by the Greeks with the Hydra. The constellation is also sometimes associated in Babylonian contexts with Marduk's dragon, the Mushushu. Eurystheus sent Heracles to slay the Hydra, which Hera had raised purely to slay Heracles himself. Upon reaching the swamp near Lake Lerna where the Hydra dwelt, Heracles covered his mouth and nose with a cloth to protect himself from the poisonous fumes. He shot flaming arrows into the Hydra's lair at the Spring of Amimone, a deep cave from which it emerged only to terrorize nearby villagers. He then confronted the Hydra, wielding either a harvesting sickle, according to some early vase paintings, a sword, or his famed club. The chthonic creature's reaction to this decapitation was botanical. 2 grew back, an expression of the hopelessness of such a struggle for any but the hero. The weakness of the Hydra was that it was invulnerable only if it retained at least 1 head. The details of the struggle are explicit in the Bibliotheca. Realizing that he could not defeat the Hydra in this way, Heracles called upon his nephew Aeolus for help. His nephew then came upon the idea, possibly inspired by Athena, of using a firebrand to scorch the neck stumps after each decapitation. Heracles cut off each head, and Aeolus cauterized the open stumps. Seeing that Heracles was winning the struggle, Hera sent a giant crab to distract him. He crushed it under his mighty foot. The Hydra's 1 immortal head was cut off with a golden sword given to Heracles by Athena. Heracles placed the head, still alive and writhing, under a great rock on the sacred way between Lerna and Elias and dipped his arrows in the Hydra's poisonous blood. Thus, his second task was complete. Heracles would later use the arrows tipped with blood to kill other foes during his remaining labours, such as the Symphalian birds and the giant Geryon. He later used one to kill the centaur Nessus, and Nessus' tainted blood was applied to the tunic of Nessus, by which the centaur had his posthumous revenge. Both Strabo and Pausanias report that the stench of the river Enigris in Elis, which made all the fish in the river inedible, was reputed to be due to the Hydra's poison, washed from the arrows Heracles used on the centaur. When Eurystheus, the agent of Hera who was assigning the 12 labours to Heracles, found out that it was Heracles' nephew Aeolus who had handed Heracles the firebrand, he declared that the labour had not been completed alone, and as a result did not count toward the 10 labours set for him. This mythic element is an equivocating attempt to resolve the submerged conflict between an ancient 10 labours and a more recent 12.